given some of the recent
Kill two
incidents.
birds with one stone.
Indeed. It's always better to see you face to face, but nonetheless, do you want to maybe just provide us with an update? You would be aware that I'm principally interested in the spill that happened at Ranger late last year.
Yes.
Do you have some sort of prepared statement or some info that you just want to advise the committee of?
Nothing prepared, no. Open to questions.
Okay, can you just tell us about what has happened up there and how that investigation is proceeding and your visibility of it?
As you'll be aware, on the 7th of December, leach tank number 1 failed and subsequently split with the contents spilling out into the plant area. We were advised of issues on site at approximately 6:20 in the morning.
Yep.
We had staff out on site within a few hours to investigate the extent of the spill. They provided advice back shortly after, and then myself, Mr. Keith Taylor and our radiation expert were out on site the next morning doing our own follow-up investigations. Subsequent to that, we kicked off our own independent investigation into our mandated area, which is the impacts to the environment and determining whether there were any impacts to the environment. The other players include Department of Mines and Energy, Northern Territory Government, Northern Territory WorkSafe and the Department of Industries, all who have a regulatory role to play. Now, they individually have kicked off their own investigations, and subsequently, because of the 4 groups undertaking investigations, we created a task force to oversee the various investigations and make sure that they were running concurrent with each other.
Okay.
In addition to those 4 parties, we also included the Kunjapni Aboriginal Corporation and the Northern Land Council as representatives of the traditional owners on that task force.
Are they on the task force?
Yes.
Okay. So the membership is composed of those agencies, the 4 agencies that you mentioned before, yourselves, Jamie, and who was the final one?
The Northern Land Council.
The NLC. Great. Who convenes it?
It's currently convened by the Northern Territory Department of Mines and Energy.
Okay. So that's the composition. How many times has the task force met?
I'd say approximately 5. We have a meeting tomorrow.
They have a meeting tomorrow. Okay. They occur in Darwin or Jabiru or somewhere else?
Wherever appropriate, and usually people have to phone in to attend.
Okay.
Yes.
They're electronic meetings. How many times has the task force met so far?
I'd say 5.
5 times. Okay. Is there an independent expert who's being appointed as lead investigator? There's been some press reports along those lines?
Yes, as part of the process, the Department of Industries have sought an independent investigator to undertake an investigation into not only the mode of the leach tank failure, but the current status of the plant, as well as any governance issues around ongoing maintenance for the plant.
What do you know about other leach tanks on site? How many are there and what condition are they in? How confident are you that we might not see a repeat of this event?
There are 7 leach tanks on site. The leach tank that failed was leach tank number 1. The remaining 6 tanks, I believe, are structurally sound and they've been emptied of their contents and are currently part of the investigation.
That's part of it, okay. Needless to say, the mines, they haven't resumed production up there yet?
No.
No. Do you have any idea when they're proposing to restart the mill?
No.
No? Okay. Days, weeks, months, or really no idea?
Oh, look, I wouldn't hazard to guess at this point.
That's right.
And it would still be dependent upon the approval of the
That's
Minister
right.
for Industry.
Yeah.
Commonwealth Minister or
Yes.
Territory? Okay. So there's actually a hold on restarting of the mill until Commonwealth approves of...
Until they are satisfied that ERA can commence operations.
All right. Can you just describe for us the work program then of the task force?
The work program, essentially the task force, as I've said, oversights the investigations that are underway. We provide a report back individually on our own investigations during the task force meetings, and collectively they make decisions about the ongoing investigations, including feeding into the independent investigation where required.
All right. Can you just describe for us the role of the OSS specifically with relation to that task force?
Our role on the task force is to feed into the process of the independent investigation. Our specific role in terms of investigation is into our mandated area, which is to determine impacts to the external environment. So we come to the table with information regarding our activities, and anything that we can feed into any other investigations that are ongoing, we will at that point.
Is there any, recognising that this is afoot now, but is there anything you can tell us about external impacts? Firstly, how you define external, and what have you discovered thus far?
External is to the external environment outside of the mine site area. None of our monitoring to date indicates an impact outside of the mine site area.
Did you step up or increase perimeter monitoring after the accident, or did the company, I should say?
We certainly we have continuous monitoring in place in the creeks, which is ongoing. We, in addition to that, undertook additional downstream ecotox monitoring to ensure that we were covering off on the biological side. We've also undertaken various activities on site in relation to our investigation, which includes sampling both of surface and ground waters, as well as radiological measurements throughout the site.
Okay. What are you able to discover about groundwater impacts directly beneath the impact area, whether or not they've left the perimeter of the site? What about water bodies directly below the site?
At this point in time, what we've done is engage Geoscience Australia to assist us with the independent investigation. So at this point in time, I can't provide any further information on that specific issue.
Does the leach tank failure have any implications for the proposed 3 Deeps underground mine?
Oh, I think you probably have to ask EACD.
Ask
Environmental Assessment Compliance Division. At this point in time, I couldn't comment, as we don't have the results of the investigation. So its impact on Ranger 3 Deeps is...
They might be a little bit later in the program.
Yep.
Okay, that's all right. In a statement to the stock market on the 30th of January of this year, ERA said that it would allocate $1.3 million to the remaining clean-up, decommissioning and investigation costs. Given that your work's not complete and you don't know, it appears to be open-ended, you don't know when it will be complete and when the mine may be restarting, do you have any idea on what basis ERA can make that claim?
Oh, I'm not privy to why they made that claim or under what circumstances, so no.
Okay. What's the status? So the investigation, I guess, is part of the work, but what's the status of cleanup specifically of the material that leaked?
The material on the surface is defined in 3 zones, zone A, B and C. I might pass to Keith if he wants to provide some detail on this.
Great.
Keith Taylor, Supervising Science Division. The 3 zones were, I guess, arbitrarily designated as the areas that the company cleaned up in that order. Zone 3 is the only zone that remains to be cleared, which was the zone immediately around the failed structure where it was unsafe to enter.
You're working outside in?
Yeah, so within probably 1 or 2 days of the incident, the great majority of the material had been removed from the roadways and the surrounding areas. We attended site and cleared each of those 2 zones, and we took water samples and other things to make sure that the cleanup had been effective. And I believe we will be clearing the final zone shortly.
Could you, I don't know if you've got this info at the table or whether you want to take it on notice and table it for us. Do you have estimates of how much material was spilled into each of the 3 zones by volume or mass?
The total amount of material that's spilt would be in the order of 1.3 megalitres. It would be very difficult to estimate exactly what quantity went to any particular area. ERA began their clean-up immediately. By the time that we had officers on site, quite a bit of the material had already been picked up and moved to a safe area. So to quantify specifically how much ended up in each area is difficult.
That's interesting. Not possible even to provide a rough estimate if I don't hold you to the individual megalitre? I mean, you understand why that's a fairly important concern.
Certainly, we understand the total aerial extent of the spill. The depths across site of that spill would then equate to how much volume remained in those areas, and that's the difficulty in terms of, in places it was between 1 centimetres and 5 centimetres deep, for instance. So it's hard to quantify exactly, or even roughly.
In their statement of the 19th of December of last year, ERA said that slurry was removed from outside the exclusion zone. Had that occurred before your staff got there?
I'm not sure what you refer to as the exclusion zone, but ERA did commence clean-up works almost immediately the incident occurred. The incident occurred obviously in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
So we weren't on site until about 11 a.m. the next morning, and by that time clean-up works were well and truly underway.
Okay. So you don't know how much material spilled outside the bunded area, for example? Maybe if we can work from the outside in, as it sounds as though the clean-up crews were doing. Did any material at all leave the mine site laterally?
No.
Okay. The mine is composed of various areas that can contain radiological materials and those that can't. Did any spill outside areas where this sort of material would be prohibited from going?
If you're referring to what they call the controlled areas.
Maybe that's what they mean by exclusion area. Yeah.
Certainly, yes. Some went on the roadways and some of the hard stand areas around, but none of it left the plant area of the mine site.
Any way of estimating how much got into the controlled area?
Into the controlled area or outside of the controlled area?
Sorry, outside, I beg your pardon.
Again, it's from our observations, a certain proportion remained within the bunded structure of the leach tanks, and that'll be part of our ongoing investigation, is determining exactly the proportion that remained inside and therefore the proportion that remained outside. We have an estimation of exactly how much was in the tank, and Keith's alluded to that, 1.3 megalitres.
Yeah.
We would assume at a worst case, the majority of that spilled outside of the bunded area, but that'll be part of our investigation.
We'll know towards the end. Okay.
Yes.
Where has the cleaned up material gone? Where's it been taken?
Pit number 1.
It's been put into the pit 1. Okay. Did it need to be diluted or treated in any way, or was it just dumped?
No, it was just placed in the pit.
Okay. Would I need to speak to Arpanza to establish elevated doses that any of the workforce might have accrued in having to clean this material up? Radiation doses, I mean.
I don't believe Arpanza would have those figures at this point in time. We certainly have followed up with our radiation staff the radiation readings undertaken by ERA, and we have no reason to believe they are incorrect, and they indicate that the radiation doses in the area are no different to what would be expected from that part of the plant.
Even though more than 1 million litres of radioactive slurry has been dumped in there? Correct.
The slurry itself is a combination of the ground ore plus acid, so that area itself is one of the more active areas in the mine site anyway, given the dust issue with the grinding of ore. Okay. So essentially the only additive at that point in time is acid.
Okay, but also that the material was uncontained and sloshing around all over the place.
On the ground, material remains on the ground, but the radiation readings that we undertook on site on the Sunday indicated to us that it was no different to what you would expect.
No
from
elevated,
that area.
That's interesting. Okay, and will that data all be produced when you produce your final report?
Our data and ERA's data will be part of our report. Yes.
Okay, so it might preempt my next question. Is ERA supplying all the radiation dose measurements, or are you undertaking your own independent monitoring?
We've undertaken our own independence, and we are also getting ERA's data. Yes.
Okay. So what can you tell us about the cause of the spill, and does that have any implications for the integrity of the other leach tanks?
At this point, I can't comment on the cause of the spill. ERA certainly have their own views, so that will be part of the independent investigation.
Okay. Finally, on this one, has any information been shared between Ranger or within the remit of your office, obviously, and Rio Tinto's Rossing mine regarding failed leach tanks clean-up prevention, given that they had a very similar accident, in fact an identical accident as far as I could tell, at the Rossing Uranium Mine?
I'm aware that Rossing did have an issue with their leach tanks, but I'm unaware of whether or not ERA have been talking directly to Rossing about that. They are part of the same larger company, Rio Tinto.
No, sorry, I don't ask you to speak for them. Have you shared any information with people on the ground or regulators in Namibia?
No.
No, okay. Other matters at Ranger, are you aware of any incident in the R3D decline in recent weeks?
I'm not aware of any incident in the R3 Deeps decline.
So I don't know whether Senator Birmingham's going to shut me down if I put a rumour to you, but there have been rumours of a tunnel collapse or a tunnel partial collapse on the decline into 3 Deeps. on or around the 11th of February. Are you able to, if that's not ringing a bell at all?
What is ringing a bell is that ERA have encountered some what they would call poor ground conditions. I don't believe they've had any collapse per se. We've been advised that ERA are looking to realign their tunnel to remain outside of those poor ground conditions, but I'm unaware of any failure.
Okay.
And you would expect to be informed?
I would expect to be informed, yes.
Okay. So look, just to wrap up here, we don't know when you'll be providing. I find it a little bit odd that that's completely open-ended, that you have no idea when there'll be a final report. Is that a bit peculiar? Should I read anything into that?
Are you talking about our report or the independent investigation?
Well, both.
Report?
I guess your inputs into it, then the independent investigation.
Our report, certainly. We are expecting information back from Geoscience probably in the order of April, and we'll be looking to finish up our report shortly after that.
Okay.
Our release of the report will be also dependent on the release of the other reports, so as not to preempt any actions that may occur.
Is it your understanding that they will be put into the public domain?
Ours certainly will, yes.
And the departments?
Department of Industries, you probably have to talk to them about the release of that report.
Oh, well, this is a very open and transparent government, so I have high hopes. Two others very briefly, and if we're short of time, I'm happy to have these taken on notice. An incident involving the unauthorised vehicle movement of November 3, potentially contaminated truck that left the mine area through a hole in the fence. You were assisting the NT Mines Department. Any report or update on the status of that investigation?
Yes, we've completed our report into that, and we've provided that report to the members of the Mine Site Technical Committee. The findings of that report, in essence, were that the vehicle in question, which was a Hilux utility, was uncontaminated, and that the two persons in question took that vehicle off the site in deliberate contravention of company policies and procedures. They knew that they were doing an inappropriate thing. They sought to avoid detection by taking that vehicle off site in the middle of the night by a circuitous route. They were detected by security and the vehicle was returned to site. So we provided some minor recommendations to the company around slight changes to their induction process and other procedural matters, but in essence it came down to the deliberate actions of two individuals who chose to contravene company procedure.
Okay. Would you be aware if any disciplinary action had been taken, or was that not in your remit?
We were advised of disciplinary action against those two, yes.
Was. Okay, thanks. And my final one, still in relation to vehicle issues. On February 20, there were extensive media reports concerning the movement of inadequately secured uranium drums for a laboratory in Perth back to the Ranger Mine site. Does OSS have any visibility of that, or have you made any independent assessment of that incident?
We have not made any independent assessment. My understanding is that they were being transported in accordance with the Act, and there was no issue to answer.
No, it's also important to note they weren't uranium drums, they were exploration samples.
Samples of ore?
Not all of them. They were actually being taken away and or returned to the site from rock strength testing, so the majority of the samples weren't actually mineralised.
Some of them were, by the sounds of it.
There was some very low-grade radioactivity in those, but they were transported in accordance with the requirements.
Okay. Just finally...
And that final point is important to note, that they were transported in accordance with requirements.
So is that the media reports that I'm referring to on and around Feb 20, as being incorrectly implied or reported that those drums were inadequately secured?
If that's what they were reporting, then yes.
Then yes, okay.
So far, the stories I've seen based compared with the information that I've received when asked for it would indicate that they were inaccurate reports.
All right, thanks, Senator. And just lastly...
Where's his final question, Senator?
I've asked about four final questions.
This will be the final one. Thank you.
The last final question.
The last of the last.
You put a clarification or a correction, I guess, to the last time we met, which was around mineralised ore that had been taken out of the 3 Deeps decline and stockpiled somewhere. So thanks for correcting the record. Does that 300 tonnes, I think it was, then go into the mill? Is it legal to process that ore, or does it just sit there until the decline works have concluded? Yes,
until ERA get approval to go ahead with Ranger 3 Deeps, they have to stockpile it separately and not process it.
All right. Is no, I
This is
really
the
am.
last question of the last question. This is your last
I really
question.
am pushing my luck now.
This is your last question.
Is work still continuing in that underground area by the company, or is that ceased as far as you're aware? Whether
No,
it be
it continues. The exploration decline continues. They're almost up to the end of phase 1, which is 2 kilometres long, and then they start phase 2, which involves a vent rise and some workings to take them close to the ore body.
Chair's been very patient. I'll leave it there. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Senator Ludlam. Thank you, Mr McAllister and Mr Taylor. I'll now call the Director of National